Welcome to the Timeless Talents channel. In today's video, we'll be highlighting some renowned mothers and their stunning children, along with an age comparison. Enjoy the content and make sure to subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching. Helen Hunt, 62 years old, and Emmett Carnahan, 27 years old. Hilary Duff, 37 years old, and Luca Cruz Comrie, 13 years old. Christina Aguilera, 44 years old, and Max Lyron Brutman, 17 years old. Celine Dion, 57 years old, and Renee Charles Angelil, 24 years old. Shakira, 48 years old, and Milan Peak Mubarak, 12 years old. Jessica Alba, 44 years old, and Hayes Alba Warren, 7 years old. Julia Roberts, 57 years old, and Henry Daniel Motor, 18 years old. Reese Witherspoon, 49 years old, and Deacon Reese Philippa, 21 years old. Gwyneth Paltrow, 52 years old, and Moses Martin, 19 years old. Catherine Zeta-Jones, 55 years old, and Dylan Douglas, 25 years old. Nicole Kidman, 58 years old, and Connor Cruz, 30 years old. Susan Sarandon, 78 years old, and Jack Henry Robbins, 36 years old. Meryl Streep, 76 years old, and Henry Wolf, 45 years old. Catherine Zeta-Jones, 55 years old, and Dylan Douglas, 25 years old. Isabella Rossellini, 73 years old, and Roberto Rossellini, 32 years old. Jamie Lee Curtis, 66 years old, and Thomas Guest, 30 years old. Jessica Lange, 76 years old, and Samuel Walker Shepard, 38 years old. Liv Tyler, 48 years old, and Milo William Langdon, 20 years old. Britney Spears, 43 years old, and Cian Preston Federline, 19 years old. Victoria Beckham, 51 years old, and Brooklyn Beckham, 26 years old. Adele, 37 years old, and Angelo Atkins, 13 years old. Mila Kunis, 41 years old, and Dmitry Kutcher, 8 years old. Sally Field, 78 years old, and Peter Craig, 55 years old. Michelle Pfeiffer, 67 years old, and John Henry Kelly, 31 years old. Julianne Moore, 64 years old, and Caleb Freundlich, 27 years old. Kate Hudson, 46 years old, and Ryder Robinson, 21 years old. Mary Steenburgen, 72 years old, and Charlie McDowell, 42 years old. Kate Blanchett, 56 years old, and Dashel John Upton, 23 years old. Halle Berry, 58 years old, and Mateo Martinez, 11 years old. Jane Bergman, 49 years old, and Jaden Rainey Boreanas, 23 years old. Sharon Stone, 67 years old, and Rowan Joseph Bronstein, 25 years old. Andy McDowell, 67 years old, and Justin Qualley, 39 years old. Gina Davis, 69 years old, and Keon William Jarahi, 21 years old. Uma Thurman, 55 years old, and Levon Hawk, 23 years old. Gwen Stefan, 55 years old, and Kingston Rossdale, 19 years old. Madonna, 66 years old, and Rocco Ritchie, 24 years old. Jennifer Lopez, 56 years old, and Maximilian David Muniz, 17 years old. Natalie Portman, 44 years old, and Aleph Portman Millipede, 14 years old. Anne Hathaway, 42 years old, and Jonathan Rosebanks Schulman, 9 years old. Goldie Hawn, 79 years old, and Oliver Hudson, 48 years old. Jodie Foster, 62 years old, and Charles Bernard Foster, 27 years old. Meg Ryan, 63 years old, and Jack Quaid, 33 years old. Angelina Jolie, 50 years old, and Maddox Chivon Jolie Pitt, 24 years old. Jennifer Garner, 53 years old, and Samuel Garner Affleck, 13 years old. Diane Keaton, 79 years old, and Duke Keaton, 25 years old.